With Tony Khan addressing William Regal's AEW release and more, this is Wrestling Hub. My name is John and you're watching the Wrestling Report. Before we get into the rest of the video, make sure you subscribe to Wrestling Hub and turn on all notifications to stay up to date with everything in the world of pro wrestling. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Wrestling Hub Official and follow us on Twitter at Wrestling_Hub. On his podcast, Jarrett defended AEW's decision to use Bow Wow as he said, "Here's the cool part that I really think. Is Bad Bunny for everybody? No. Is Shaq on TV for everybody? No. Rob Gronkowski or whatever pop culture figure, Logan Paul, whatever it may be, they bring eyeballs, and so they may bring a massive amount of eyeballs. If we get a small amount of a percentage to hang around and convert them, it's such a win." Talking to the sports media podcast, Renee Paquette noted how her husband Jon Moxley does not need her to tell great stories in AEW, saying, "We've definitely not had that conversation. Jon and I haven't spoken about it. Tony Khan and I haven't spoken about it, but I'm sure Jon would agree with this. His character is so lone wolf, does his own thing, walks to the beat of his own drum. I think me adding a layer to that is not something that he needs. I just don't really see that being a thing that he needs, especially with the style that Jon wrestles. There's not really a lot of room for me to go out there, and what am I going to add to that? Jon's such a great performer with everything that he does. Adding me in there just muddies that storyline, I think." Recalling how she came up with her "excuse me" catchphrase, Vickie Guerrero explained to Pro Wrestling Illustrated that our wrestling fans are incredibly intelligent when they know something is wrong. They guessed it. You can hear people saying in the front row, "You forgot your lines, you don't belong here." I was sweating and nervous. I wanted for Teddy Long to just take me backstage. I just wanted to go home. They were yelling, throwing fingers at me, horrible gestures. I was a heel. People hated me, so that was easy for them. And I just yelled, "Excuse me," and they roared back at me, and I said it again. I got out of it, but nothing was produced from that whole segment. The writer said, "Hey, just use 'excuse me' again." I said, "It's not going to work. It was a fluke." Every week we wrote in "excuse me," and that's how I started getting my entrance. 17 years later, I've trademarked it, and it's mine now. I'm pretty proud of how that progress is carried with me. Revealing that WWE canceled an NXT title feud, Solo Sikoa told Superstar Crossover that, "I felt like before I got called up, there were a lot of plans to go after Carmelo Hayes, maybe Bron Breakker. You know, generation versus generation. But I felt like it worked out just fine, man. Just to let everybody know that I never lost the North American Championship and had to give it up. So those are two different things." Touching on his struggles with alcohol, Kurt Angle revealed on his podcast that, "I was having a tough time. I was making horrible decisions, irresponsible decisions. Getting 4 DUIs in 5 years was just ridiculous. When you're doing that, you know you have a problem. I didn't want to admit it until I ended up going to rehab in 2013. It took me a while to come to my gripes, but eventually I did." With Smackdown being on FS1 and seeing a dip in their ratings, Jim Cornette criticized WWE for this, saying on his podcast, "So Fox didn't air Smackdown because of the World Soccer Cup or whatever. They threw their hands up and they said, just go. We're not even gonna try. Do you want to hear what the matches on Smackdown were? I didn't watch it. I read the recap to determine whether I should and quickly got the answer to that. But would you like to just hear what the matches were? Okay, Sheamus wrestled Sami Zayn, and that alone might not have been bad. And the Bloodline actually helped Sami win this. So Sami beats Sheamus. So boy howdy, you didn't see that coming, but there was no Roman Reigns. There was no Paul Heyman because it wasn't network TV and they didn't bring out all the big guns. And to honestly spend 2 hours of my life to watch Sheamus versus Sami, meh. Because the rest of the program, Shayna Baszler versus Emma, a non-title match between Kofi Kingston and Gunter, and again, I love Gunter. I love to watch Gunter, but against Kofi Kingston? And the main event apparently, or the match they put in the main event spot, was Pablo Escobar against Ricochet. That was was the show. If I was Tony Khan right now, I'd be screaming. You a-hole wrestlers I've signed, you can't get your together and get along with each other and stop trying to get out of my contracts long enough to beat a company in a promotional war that's not even trying anymore. SmackDown main event Pablo Escobar and Ricochet, one of 3 all-star matches on a 2-hour program. If I had turned that into Vince McMahon 25 years ago, he'd have fired me. Speaking about his Team Hell No tag team with Bryan Danielson in WWE, Kane revealed that their differences caused some clashing. Telling Sports Illustrated, "Bryan and I are on such opposite ends of the political spectrum, but we respect each other as human beings and value each other's opinions. So we had conversations and learned from each other. I learned a lot from Bryan, even if we didn't always agree. Working with Bryan was probably the most fun I had in my entire wrestling career. That was because I was working with Daniel Bryan." Talking about his former Shield faction mate, Seth Rollins revealed to the Metro that obviously none of us are as close as we were, and we may never be as close as we were during those first 2 years. Everyone's off doing their own thing. We're all on separate shows. Roman and I see each other occasionally at the pay-per-views if he's on those, and neither of us see Mox ever. He's busy doing his own thing, whether it's AEW or GCW or New Japan, wherever he wants to show up. Obviously, the bond isn't as close, but it will always exist in the same way that the Horsemen are always going to be the Horsemen. The NWO are always going to be the NWO. The Shield has that type of aura about it. There's always going to be a connection there, no matter what happens or which directions we go. Speaking about plans for him to return to WWE, Carlito noted during his appearance for KNS WrestleFest that I was supposed to do the Legends Night a couple of weeks before that, and then they canceled me and said, "No, we'd rather have you in the Rumble." Yeah, it was great. What sucked was people not being there. People don't even know if I exist now. So yeah, it would have been cool to be in front of a WWE crowd again, but other than that, it was pretty fun. Explaining the botched DDT that took place in her match against Shotzi Blackheart at Survivor Series, Ronda Rousey noted during her stream that you ever wake up from a deep sleep and think of a cringe moment in your life, and you lay awake in bed. Well, I had one of those this morning. I woke up at 6:30 this morning and I was like, oh god, that DDT on the apron. So let me explain what happened. I actually pitched that spot because I loved that Shotzi does that, but we couldn't practice it in the ring because the ropes were too loose. And then we couldn't practice it when we got to the arena because there were these big cages. So everybody was like, I've taken DDTs before, but I've never helped anyone over the floor. So they were like, okay, you got to have your hand here on her leg, another hand on her hip, and you're gonna guide her over. And everyone was so focused on gotta guide her over, guide her to the floor, that it was literally all that was on my mind when it happened. And so when I was like, guide her, and when she was down, I was like, oh, just go to where you're supposed to go. So yeah, I messed it up because I was so concerned with keeping somebody safe. And a lot of times when you see me doing something the first time, it's the first time I ever did it. I was really concerned with keeping Shotzi safe, and I made it look bad. And you know what? I'm sorry, okay? Shoot me. Apparently, I deserve to be fired or burned. It reminds me of Monty Python and the Holy Grail when they were like, burn her. There weren't calls to fire anybody when Madcap Moss and Big E were spiked on their heads, and they were like, burn her anyway. I'm so sorry that I was so concerned with keeping someone safe that it made the bump look bad. With William Regal seemingly on his way back to WWE, Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful provided insight into this situation, writing, AEW President Tony Khan speaks about William Regal right out of the gate. He says he has a lot of respect for William Regal. Regal approached AEW and requested they not renew his contract at the end of the year so he could spend time coaching his son and head back to WWE. Regal's request happened around October, before the Toronto shows. Tony Khan had to really think about it. The Khan family was still handling the all-out fallout, Toronto shows, and the health issues of Tony's mom. Tony Khan says that William Regal had a lot of good reasons for going back, especially his son. Considering where he was with his mother at that point, he said he understood that letting Regal out of his deal in that situation was the best move for them. Tony Khan said that William Regal is with AEW through the holidays, but they're going to make some on-screen sacrifices to help him do the right thing for his family because they feel it's the right thing. Tony Khan said his mother is improving as well. Giving more details regarding Regal's release from AEW, Cassidy Haynes of Bodyslam.net wrote that Tony Khan is asked about Regal's release and if it is unconditional, or if he is allowed to appear as talent. Tony says that he believes the deal allows him to coach, but that he will not be appearing as an on-air talent next year. Says he was surprised by Triple H's tweet about Regal. Talking about the situation with William Regal being let out of his AEW contract early, Saraya told Metro's Alistair McGeorge that everyone has an opinion on that. The reality is, it doesn't have anything to do with anything backstage. It's to do with how he feels. Us behind the scenes know why, and we're happy for him. Whether he's going there or whatever, it doesn't matter. We're just happy with whatever he wants to do with his life. He's at the age where he can do whatever he wants to do without the internet deep diving into it, or everyone saying this, that, and the other about him. Who cares? Let him be happy. Tony's so fantastic too. He lets people not do whatever they want, but he's so open-minded to how people think. If you're having a bad day, he'll be like, take a day off. If you only want to do a certain amount of time on your contract, you can totally do that. He doesn't have you locked in where you have to stay for this amount of time. He's great. I'm very lucky to have the boss that I have. And this was your pro wrestling news update. I hope you're all having a great day. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see y'all later.